Hi everyone, I'm Brittany, the host of the Shed podcast and a health coach here at Shed. Today I'm joined by Nicole, a Shed member whose wellness journey is nothing short of inspiring. After feeling out of control post-holidays, she took a leap 6 months ago in January of 2025 that led her toward a more mindful, sustainable way of living. In this episode, Nicole shares how she went from years of yo-yo dieting to embracing hydration, mindful eating, and the power of small, consistent changes. With the support of her Shed Health Coach and the impact of GLP-1s, she's not only recently broken into the 190s, but she's also discovered new possibilities for herself and a deeper understanding of what it means to be the real you. I absolutely love this conversation with Nicole. I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. So let's go ahead and dive on in. So take us back to the very beginning of your journey with Shed. You started back in January of 2025. Tell me a little bit to start us off. What were you feeling like in your body? And what did your daily life kind of look like that made you decide to start this journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just coming off of the heels of the holidays, which I always go in with the best intentions, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, I've fallen off the rails from Thanksgiving through New Year's. I pretty much had lost a little bit of control, if you will. But what's interesting is that I had already been thinking about. Um, Trying to find a program that works for me. There's a lot out there. I mean, a lot of noise out there, a lot of materials in various places where I could have gone, and so I decided. What was interesting is that I saw an advertisement um, for Shed, and it was the first time to me where it was so substantive. I went to the website. I dug in a little bit more to the details that were provided, and it just seemed like it resonated with me the most. It wasn't just a quick deal, a teaser. It was like science backed about why the Shed program works. And I said, well, maybe this is the one. And I'm certainly, if not, I've been thinking about it for 6, 7 months now. And coming off of the holidays, what a great time to just kind of kickstart. I know it's New Year, I know it's a resolution, but let's do it. And honestly, even though I started in January, that's when I had my first appointment. I actually signed up like the 27th or 28th of December. And my first appointment was New Year's, maybe New Year's Day or the day after, and then so I started, soon thereafter. So yeah, and I haven't looked back since, and I have no regrets.
Yeah, it's a common thing that people struggle with is what we sometimes call yo-yo dieting, or like this kind of cycle that we get sucked into where oftentimes after the holiday, the new year comes and there comes New Year's resolutions and we want to start something and dive in. But what usually happens for people is at some point we start to fall off of those New Year's resolutions or of that program. And so taking that experience of the holidays, kind of thinking about starting a new program, finding Shed, and then actually joining Shed, what do you feel has been different this time around in terms of Shed's program and sustainability of it all?
Yeah, I would have to say, and I'm when you talk about yo-yo dieting, I could raise my hand, probably both hands, because that's me. That's been my life journey. But I think what's different was that I'm different. I had for the past, even though I've fallen off the rails a bit during the holidays, I have certainly gotten to a point in my life in a mature way of just knowing I was ready to really be in tune with my body and how it was responding to products, how it was responding to food, movement, meditation. It was the first time in a long time I've taken a look and was committed to having a whole and well-rounded view of what wellness looked like. For me, beyond just the dieting, I have become and I was becoming more centered around meditation and the need for movement and stretches and yoga and finding time to be quiet. and getting enough sleep, I have become a lot more in tune with my body and how I respond when I'm not getting the proper rest or when I'm not eating well, and and why how alcohol responds to me, and now how that's no longer an option for me. It's a point where I have come through in the journey of my health, that it just became a priority of being well, of total wellness. And I can't say I was like that in my 20s or 30s or 40s. I wasn't there. It was, what can I do to lose the weight? But if you approach it from a wellness approach, which I think Shed does, if you go to the website, it's built around wellness, and front and center, and they're always looking for ways to improve on wellness for everyone. So that's probably primarily what resonated with me, and it was at a point in my life where that's where I am, where I'm focused on wellness. Like, when my hydration is off, how does that make me feel? When my sleep is off, how does that make me feel? When I'm not eating and taking in the things that I should to fuel my body and my energy and my mind, how does that make me feel? And so I've really become a lot more in tune to it. So it was
Yeah.
just the right time, I think, for everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like you had finally hit that point in your life where it was so much more than nutrition and exercise. Because I
Yep.
think that's what a lot of people think. Like, I know back in my 20s, the things that I did to try to lose like 10 pounds as quick as I possibly
That's
could,
right.
right? It's crazy when you look back on it. And we do oftentimes just think it's about the nutrition aspect and what do we need to cut out? What do we need to restrict? And then the exercise, how do I get to the gym every single day and work out for an hour and run myself into the ground?
Right.
When what you're saying is you started to realize that there was so much more to wellness than just nutrition and exercise. Yes, those are pieces of the puzzle,
Right.
but meditation, that emotional health, stress management, sleep is a big one. I always say sleep and stress management are two of the most foundational weight loss pillars, really, to kind of unlock, right? We need to be well rested. We need to manage our stress well in order to eat properly or to exercise. And so it is so cool that you chose Shed because of that holistic approach that we offer here.
No, absolutely. It really does make a difference. And I'd never really put it together, when I was young, in my younger years, about the importance of sleep, and how in the slumps that it can impact the cognitive decline that happens when it dips in your thinking, I should say, when you don't get the proper rest. So yeah, all of that, and the stress management is huge. Not only exercise is certainly a component of helping, but the fresh air, the bright lights, the just dance. If you some Just what I've learned is what to do in lieu of grabbing something to eat, a cookie or a candy or a bag of chips. I've learned now what to do.
Yeah. I want to kind of take it back before you started Shed and whether that was 20 years,
Yep.
10 years, however long it had kind of been. What did your life look like beforehand? What did your eating habits look like? What were some of those pain points that you experienced when it came to weight loss or health?
Yeah, I so for the most part, I've tried to focus in on eating well most of the time. What was problematic for me was portion control. So I would eat what I thought was was great, but I thought I was choosing the right foods, but I was eating too much of it. I also have, there is a lot on the platform for patients about all the coaching and all of the learning that's on there that helps you learn about the science behind reading a label, and and the importance of the sleep, and there's a food plan. So, and I like it digitally because I can read it, absorb it, go through the courses, and then I can come back to it at any time if I feel as though I need a refresher to remind me. But I would say the big thing for me was portion control. And in a lot of ways, I was a stress eater. And so when I was becoming more, stressful, and the stress ebbs and flows, it can't be to the point of a tipping point, but for the most part, stress ebbs and flows in your life. How can I better manage my stress? Would that mean me better planning my meals ahead of time and making sure food's already in the house, in the refrigerator, in the pantry? It also meant me planning my schedule and my household schedule, of a child and a spouse, and making sure that the schedule wasn't too hectic. It was manageable so it didn't seem out of sorts. Because if your schedule's out of sorts or there's no schedule at all, if I'm out of sorts, the household is out of sorts. And so doing a better job of managing my sleep there. And honestly, I'll have to say turning off the television. It is amazing how after certain hours, I would say after the evening news, it's just, you could sit, if you're not careful, you could sit and you realize, wow, it's time for the evening, it's time for the night news. I've sat here and watched, whether it's binge watching your favorite show or just getting sucked into a sitcom, and with the commercials that come through. And I'm thinking, I've got to make better use of my time, because I wasn't always one to watch a lot of television, but I found myself, and maybe it happened in 2020 during COVID, and that's where I got hooked back into watching television quite a bit. And I just needed to break that cycle because I know it wasn't healthy. I knew sitting on the couch or just sitting for a prolonged period of time wasn't helpful, and I definitely needed to make some changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and deep changes like structural changes in your life, planning changes in your life, these little things like, okay, how much TV am I watching or what am I doing leading up to bed and those sorts of things. You worked with a coach, you were in our coaching program and still are, with your GLP-1 as well. What impact has your coach? I know you mentioned the modules have been really helpful, which you get with coaching as well, but what impact has your coach had on being able to implement these holistic wellness habits?
The coaching has been phenomenal. That's an accountability buddy. My coach really is. I look forward to the biweekly meetings and calls that we have. First of all, it has to be, turn on your camera, which is important. You can't just be driving or, not. Turning on the camera does show engagement, and it's important. And what I enjoy, she's my cheerleader. But when I'm running into challenges, and I'll say, well, I didn't feel so well in the past 2 weeks, or I didn't, I'm not sure. The scale's not moving. It was moving well, and I'm not sure what's wrong. She helps me troubleshoot. So we go through a list of, what are some areas. Tell me what you did do. So I've been journaling lately, which I've not liked doing. I love writing, but I like typing more. But journaling, the whole art of writing, is so essential. So I've been journaling, and so I can pull and share what I've been doing. And what's interesting is it's revealing, because when I'm talking it through with her, sometimes I'm like, aha, I see exactly what the issue is. So she helps me make tweaks. And then there's the regular check-ins. Even though we talk every 2 weeks, there's the check-in by text, which I appreciate. And there's the check-in also by Shed, just saying, hey, how are things going? It's time for a check-in. And that all helps. I also like that through coaching, I get a chance to set goals for the next time. And again, it's just helping me be accountable. And because it's every 2 weeks, it's front and center of here's what I need to do, and I do it. So that has made all the difference.
Yeah, that accountability piece is really huge on a journey. Troubleshooting is huge to be able to bounce ideas off of, hey, this didn't work. And I know in my coaching session, sometimes we come to the session and at the beginning, it's like, Oh, it was a tough couple of weeks, and I'm not sure how I can implement this habit. And by the end of it, it's like, hey, we brainstormed and we moved some pieces around in your schedule, and now we have this like realistic, digestible plan to kind of implement over the next 2 weeks. And I think to your point of it is a bi-weekly check-in where you do set a small goal. We call them SMART goals, and so they're things that are very manageable, they're very realistic, they're very attainable. Because I think back to our conversation about yo yo dieting, those goals can be so scary and daunting. And in the first instance of us like failing with those bigger things can be really discouraging. And it can feel like, is this even going to work? Am I actually going to be able to do this? But with breaking down some of those bigger goals into like smaller, more bi-weekly, bite-sized pieces, they slowly start to stack up on top of one another. And I think that's what you've done an amazing job with. Is it started with maybe just hydration and getting 64 to 80 ounces of water per day, and then you started focusing on sleep and really spent a few weeks diving into what is going to help me improve my sleep. And then it was a little bit of portion control, nutrition, exercise, those sorts of things. And over time you look back, I'm sure it's been 6 months now, and it's like, wow, I've implemented so many awesome things. So
Yeah,
uh,
it's
yeah.
amazing. I was looking through my phone for through I was looking for something through my photos, and in my search I came across pictures from January, pictures from March, pictures from April, and pictures from last week, and I thought I could even see it in my face. Like, wow, what a transformation that is taking place here that I had not really seen. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
that was great, and you hit on something, Brittany, because I realized the importance of tracking hydration and the amount of water. I would say for anybody who's listening, you'd be surprised how much that makes a difference. And just making sure you're hydrated. I now carry a water bottle with me, that I can refill at any time, whether I'm flying, um, or on the road. I find it important. And for many of you who've returned to the office, what what I or even if you work from home, some days you do find yourselves in meetings, meeting after meeting after meeting, and you just don't get in all the water and the hydration that you think you've gotten in. So I say track it. It is great. It is a great way because it helps me on the days when I'm busy. I'm very intentional about making sure that I may have two or three refillable bottles of water or containers near my desk so that first, in between meetings where I can have the ability to turn the camera off, I'm getting up and stretching and moving my body and just stretching because sitting for too long is very unhealthy. Um, and then I make sure that I stay hydrated. It keeps me alert. It really does. And so that I would highly recommend that to anybody. The hydration piece, you'd be surprised because even with me tracking it on my busier days where I am running errands on a Saturday or going um, my child to a sports practice or something, I find I'm not taking in as much, um, for various reasons. I'm on the interstate. I'm going back and forth, and I don't want to get stuck, not being able to, so I don't drink as much water as I should, but I make it a point to always have now a bottle or two in the car. And now that it's getting hot outside, I now have a cooler, and with the not bags of ice, but you know how you can get those containers where you can freeze it and refreeze it and reuse it. I add those, and I add small 10-ounce bottles of water. And so I keep it in the trunk of my car now or on the floor in the back. And my son and I, we're constantly getting water, to stay hydrated. And because it's such a focus for me, it has become such a focus for him. And if he's playing a lot of sports and it's hot outside, it's even more important. And yeah, um, staying hydrated means I don't have a headache. The first thing when I say to myself, wow, I have a headache, I'm not sure where that's coming from, I think about how much water I may have already had for the day. And as soon as I rehydrate myself, not with a sip and not even with a bottle, it may take 3 bottles of water, 3 16-ounce bottles. I it's a world of difference. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so many amazing little habits that you have really compiled on top of each other. And so I'm curious, as you're saying what has worked well for you, if you could go back to yourself in January when you were probably a little bit nervous to start this journey, you wasn't quite sure what to expect, what was going to happen, but you were ready to take that leap of faith. What would you tell yourself and probably a lot of our audience that's, listening, watching today? What would you tell yourself in terms of getting started on the journey, in terms of what has worked well for you on the journey, and also what things would you maybe do differently when on the journey?
Yeah, great questions. So first, I would say if you're on the fence about whether to start, take the chance, take the leap, do it. When I would say, as soon as I learned about Shed, I acted upon it. I saw it, and I said, "Wow, this one looks interesting." I've seen people who have been successful, and I've talked to people who've been successful. I've talked to people who started and not with Shed, but they didn't with GLP-1, and they had a negative reaction to it. Um, Many people may have known that Oprah had a special on it on television maybe 2 years ago now, and some folks had success and some folks gave it a try and they weren't successful. And I wasn't sure. I was on the fence for about 6 months, and I just said I'm gonna give it a try, and I'll know in a month. I'll probably know in 2 weeks, but I'll definitely know in a month how my if my body tolerates it well, and if it's for me. And I talked to my healthcare provider 6 months prior about it as well, and had the okay to try something. I just needed to make up my mind that I was ready.
Yeah. Yeah, you took that leap of faith and it's led you to where you are now. And sometimes, like, the scariest things can be the best things, right? And so I am so happy that you took that leap of faith. I know that you shared with me that you just recently broke into the 190s, which is such an exciting milestone. And so I want to hear a little bit about that journey, how that's felt. Tell me a little bit about that.
So it has felt amazing. I've got to tell you, because you know I couldn't. I wasn't weighing myself every day, but I was weighing myself every other day, and definitely once a week at a minimum. Sometimes every other day, and journaling, or where you sometimes you think, oh, I've got this. I understand now. I now have a sense of how much water I've had. I know what I'm eating. But every so often, I noticed when I would get on the scale, it wasn't moving. And I thought, what's different? And I gave it a week. I didn't stress over the fact that Wednesday didn't change from Monday. Our bodies fluctuate with liquids and fluids, and I get that, especially women, and so I recognize that. But when it went on for a week or two, and I kept, that's when I really kind of doubled down. Like, okay, I'm not going to just go by intuition. I'm really going to log and track my water. How much am I getting? Okay, I'm noticing that I'm sleeping. I'm getting to bed an hour later than I normally do, and all is now almost an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm going back to my regimen of my routine of when I go to bed. I am stepping up my, not a stroll. I'm pumping up my sweat for walking. I started really kick starting those. I utilize, and I always have the GLP-1 boost. as well as Revive. I don't want to lose sight of mentioning that because the Revive really helped me with, I think, no side effects. I haven't had the side effects that what was had me on the fence 6 months, 12 months before, and from the stories that I've heard, that when I read what it does, the description before I even ordered it, and what it does exactly what it said it will do. So, I continued with my Revive. I continued with the boost for energy, and all of that was working, but I couldn't figure out what was wrong, and it all had to do with little tweaks, making sure I got the water, making sure I was getting my rest. And then I realized there were probably 3 or 4 instances where I was eating a little bit more, but not enough protein. And that's where a conversation I had with my coach, I realized that for whatever reason, I had decreased the amount of protein and didn't really realize I had done that. And so it varies for everyone, but I do find that on the higher, maybe the higher range for me of protein, it does better. It keeps me satisfied longer with the water intake and movement, all of those together, and of course the sleep, all of that, and with doing everything else I'm supposed to with my routine of the supplements, the scale moved. It maybe it was a plateau, but all of those things helped to making sure it was aligned, realigned. It helped me cross over under 200, which was great because I felt amazing. I'm like, I did it, I conquered it because I didn't know what was holding me back. And I want to also share that, this past weekend, I just went through my closet of all the things, like I don't, all the things, I pulled all the clothes that no longer fit me. They're too big. And I mean, I have like an entire walk-in closet full of clothing that I can't wear anymore. And I'm not complaining. That's unbelievable. And I never thought I would be at that point. So I'm like renewed energy. It's like nothing can stop me now.
And it's time for a shopping spree, it
That's
sounds like as
right.
well. Well, that's so cool. I think just something you keep coming back to is the importance of sleep, which maybe wasn't something that you ever focused on in terms of weight loss as the goal. Hydration, which is something that a lot of people just think, oh, water's water, I'll get around to it when I get around to it. And it's been such a foundational thing for you to implement those two things. And that's, again, the beauty of coaching, where if somebody hits a plateau on a GLP-1 medication, you have a coach to lean on to say, I'm plateauing. And we as coaches have almost like a little checklist that we kind of run through. And it's like, okay, let's bring it back to the basics. Are we doing this? Are we doing that? Are we doing that? And oftentimes we do find 1 to 3 or 4 things that maybe have fallen to the wayside, or maybe we haven't quite gotten to implementing that yet. And that's like that next step that we're ready to level up with. And so that support to troubleshoot and to work through some of those roadblocks, it sounds like has been really, really helpful for you.
No, I completely agree. And I'll be honest, I have been one that I had never been skeptical about coaching. I've just thought, oh, I can lose the weight, I'm fine. And, you know, as, we grow and we evolve. And I've always been one who exercise. I don't need an accountability partner. I can exercise. I don't need that. But now I feel like I do need it, and I look forward to having discussions and talking about challenges and as well as triumphs, right? And so, what has been also very helpful for me, and why I think this is going to be successful this time around, does have to do with, hey, we all have days and moments in time where we just say, oh, we went on vacation, and or you went to, a long vacation, or you went, it's just a prolonged period of time. It may have been a week or two, but the main thing is just stop whenever it happens. Stop, go back to basics, to just starting, if you have to start slow, for those who are like, I've done this before and I'm tired and I just don't know if this is going to work this time, it will. Just back to basics, and don't be so hard on yourself. Just go back to the basics of the sleep, of hydration, of portions, and really just making sure you get enough protein and all of the things that we've been talking about, movement and exercise. It doesn't have to be like I used to. You don't have to go run like as if you're training for a marathon, because you will not want to eat half a pizza. You will not have the desire to do any of that anymore. You won't feel like you need to exercise like ridiculously to because you overdid it, overcompensated with overeating. No, small tweaks every day. Just say, this is what I'm going to do. And the pre-planning, just plan out, this is, if it's on a Sunday or whatever day works, of planning out your meals and just having them in nice containers to go. Because whether you're on the go and you need to take it to work, or when you just simply return home and you're hungry and you don't know what to turn to, it's already prepared. Just reheat it, and or have a salad, and the portions are already right. And you would be surprised. you know Eat slower. My son has said, you're eating a lot slower than I am. I said, it helps me to eat slower. I'm actually having a conversation with you, so I'm eating slower. And then I find that I am full, you know,
Yep.
and without realizing it, without needing to go back up and put more food on my plate.
Yep. Yeah, it's those small things. And I think that's the power of a GLP-1 medication as opposed to some of these yo-yo diets that we've done in the past. Is yo-yo dieting is so like all or nothing. It's one extreme or the other. Like you said, you eat a whole pizza and say, okay, well, that was an extreme, and now I have to go to the other extreme to exercise and run a marathon tomorrow. And you get burnt out from that, and it's exhausting, and it causes this self-doubt in a way too over time. With a GLP-1 medication, it kind of does allow you to get back to those basics. We practice something called the 80-20 rule, which I'm sure you've worked with your coach on. And it's this idea that we don't have to be perfect with our eating habits. And in fact, that's how you become a good eater for the rest of your life. That's how it becomes sustainable. Um, and so finding a little bit more of that balance and that middle ground with things by coming back to the basics instead of always flying from one extreme to the other. And it is that GLP-1 medication that can really help you reframe that mindset around weight loss and some of these healthy habits. And so I'm curious, you've definitely talked about sleep and hydration and some of those strategies that have worked well for you. You mentioned at the beginning portion control was a big thing for you. And you just mentioned this idea of more mindful eating and slower eating and how that in itself has been such a wonderful tactic. Tell me a little bit about your portion control journey. Tell me a little bit about what it used to look like and maybe some scenarios of what you used to struggle with and what it now looks like and what those strategies look like, because I know that's a big thing that people struggle with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So definitely the portion control was a big struggle of mine. That would then, or I would say, after eating, I would think, oh, I should have a popsicle, or I should have, vanilla cone with some chocolate and nuts all over it. But that adds up over time, and it becomes a habit, and not a good habit. It's good to treat yourself occasionally. I'm glad that there various products in the stores now that are more forgiving. I mean, Jello is great if you want to have some Jello. I would do that. Cottage cheese, all of those things. But there's so much more, whether you pay a little bit more to have them control the portions for you, or you buy it in bulk and you have containers that you do. Whatever works well for you. I would say start off with the portions. Because what happens, what I didn't do, I would turn to food when I was stressed, right? And because I would turn to food, there would be a lot more mindless eating. So much so that, I would eat, and then, in 10 minutes, I'm eating something else. And my brain hasn't even figured out that I've taken in what I've eaten already 10 minutes ago. I haven't given it enough of a chance. Now, I've always been one to eat at the table. I don't eat at my eat in front of a television. But what I did notice I had started doing was I was eating at my desk, even at work. At work or at home for work. I started again rolling into these meetings, and I just had to, you know, press pause and block time on my calendar and just say, nope, this time is dedicated to me, whatever that means. And that allowed me to step away. Oftentimes I needed to step away from the screen, all screens, phone, laptop, television, screens, they're all screens, and sit and take in, natural light, and eat. Sometimes I might pause to look at a magazine, because that helps me slow down also. But I try not to wait and eat where I'm starving. I've just got to grab everything. I
Yeah.
am monitoring more of when am I really hungry, right? And it's at a good point where I can go down, prepare my food, warm it up, um, lay out everything, and have a meal with myself, as opposed to just whatever I can grab really quickly. Um, I know we're in a lot of times in our society of go quick mode, but over time it's not healthy. It's not sustainable. We need to take time for ourselves. Our brain needs it. Um, we really do. I really felt like, and I'm no scientist, but I feel like with the go go go, it was really beginning to impact where I was adding on pounds, and now where I am less stressed and I have more mindful eating, and I'm practicing mindfulness through meditation. That is, and also with exercise. It's all of those things holistically. We talked about at the beginning that you take into account that really helps me when, as I'm eating, I know, okay, this is good. I've had enough. And one little tip that I find that's highly effective for me is when I'm done eating, where not going back for seconds or anything like that, I have a hot cup of tea or hot water with a lemon squeezed in it. And me having to sip that because it's too hot. First, it warms me, which I love. And because I'm having to sip it, it allows me to sit and reflect on what's working well for me today, and what else would I love to do, what can I change to reset myself if necessary. All of that buys me time, right? And I'm not hungry anymore. Is the GLP-1 medication help? Absolutely, it helps with that. But we're not going to be on GLP medication forever. It allows me to put these habits into place that when the GLP-1 medication is scaled back, and I don't need it, these habits are already in place.
Yeah.
They just are. And it's a process. And if you practice these processes, they really do become ingrained. And you probably look forward to. I look forward to having my tea in the morning. I look forward to having my tea in the afternoon, and I look forward to having tea in the evening. It's just, it's what I do.
It's become a ritual. I love that. But yeah, I think that is such the mindset to come into this journey with is this idea that a GLP-1 medication is an amazing tool. It really is. But what is so important and why we offer coaching, right, is to be able to really implement these lifestyle changes that maybe we didn't ever really know that we needed to, or maybe we just thought it was about the nutrition and exercise, and you learn these different strategies. You mentioned some awesome ones that are so underrated, like mindful eating and eating slower so that your stomach has time to, send signals to your brain to tell you that actually you're full 10 minutes ago, right? Or even things like being more present and eating without distractions, going outside and, getting fresh air. And something I was thinking of when you were expressing all of that was how much less stress you probably feel from not stress eating and then feeling guilt afterwards, or overeating and then feeling that guilt and that stress of, oh, did I gain, weight from that? Did I mess up my diet? It's almost this like positive loop that you've really gotten into that all kind of just makes everything click, and obviously has made everything click because of, how much weight that you've lost and what your success has looked like. So we are so, so happy for you. And we're so happy that you've learned some really awesome strategies as well in terms of lifestyle changes that have holistically just created so much wellness in your life. The last question that I ask every one of our guests here at Shed, our slogan, our motto is be the real you, right? Be able to reveal what that real you inside of you is able to be. And so I'm curious, now that you have hit that 190s, what does being the real you mean to you?
Wow. That's a very good, that's a great question. I'm still evolving, you know? Um, we'll see. Um, and what I have learned and what I am learning through my whole meditation practice too is don't box yourself in, because don't say this is it, or I don't want to limit myself. Like sky's the limit, and I can tell you what I want, but it's so much more, right? And I
Mm,
want to be able to see what that so much more looks like.
yeah.
And I don't mean in the sense that now that I'm in my 190s that I'm done with weight loss. No, actually I'm not. I still have more more weight I would like to lose to get to my goal, right? But what I mean is, does that mean now I may want to train for a marathon? Maybe so. Does that mean that now I'm going to actually get into gardening? Hmm, maybe I will. Because I'm beginning to like it more. Will I want to plant flowers? Will I want to now get on a stage and act? Perhaps I will. Those things and gifts that may have been inside of me, suppressed, that I didn't even realize I could do, sky's the limit. So from a weight loss perspective, it is certainly opening up my eyes to greater possibilities of things where I may have suppressed myself thinking I'm not good enough, or how will I appear across the screen, how will people see me? And now it's about, how do you see yourself? How do you feel? And if you feel great, flaunt it. And whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it was you think you want to do, or I may wake up next week and say, you know what, I want to give surfing a try, and
Yeah.
I'm going to take the lessons to do it. I now have the energy, and I have the I can do it attitude, that I'm willing to give it a try. I may go hiking, just things that I would just say no, doing it. Um,
Yeah.
I may do now. I may go on a retreat. It's a meditation retreat. There, and I feel like with all of the opportunities that I've just described, just randomly described, but I've thought of them all recently. Those opened more doors to so many other things, right? So I don't know. I don't know. I'm looking forward to this journey that's continuing to happen, and as I continue to evolve, and I'm excited.
Yeah. the world is your oyster, it sounds like, and really anything is possible for you now where it didn't always used to be that way. It was maybe living in a little bit of a box because you had this roadblock of being at a certain weight or not having the
Insecurities. Yeah,
confidence. Yeah, totally. And now it's like, yeah, let me take those surf lessons. Let me do things that I never imagined were possible for me that are
right.
now so possible for me to live your life to your absolute fullest. So
Right.
I
And isn't
love
that
that
what life
share.
is all about? Right? And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, I'm really, I'm really very pleased and proud of the accomplishments I've made since January. It is, it's a process, it's iterative. You look back, like I said, just flipping through pictures. I'm like, wow, look at this. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Just look at me. So, yeah, I am evolving every day, and I can't wait to see as I continue to be my real, true, show my true self. That's evolving.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And we're so excited to eventually see what that turns out to be. And I'm sure if we do another interview, maybe down the line, you'll be trying out all these new things and reporting all these fun activities that you're doing. So, well, we are so happy for you and we're so honored to be able to support you, whether it's through coaching, supplements, GLP-1 through this journey. We so appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with everyone. I know it's been so helpful for so many people today. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will see you here on the Shed podcast next time.